I'm honored to represent the Committee on Victim Assistance, which includes Italy, Slovenia, Zambia, and my country, Uganda. My own country, Uganda, is among many other countries that has not been spared the scourge of the anti-personnel landmines. And therefore, it is my pleasure to be here with you over the next 3 days to discuss this important subject that affects the victims of landmines, and thus the big picture. Why a global conference on victim assistance now? In the past 1 year, victim assistance has been, the Victim Assistance Committee has been in touch and interacted with many of you, either through bilateral meetings or by analysis of your submissions on victim assistance to learn about your progress made and challenges faced in implementing victim assistance obligations. The victim assistance under the Convention has had a long history. The Anti-Personnel Landmine Convention is a people-centered convention. It is the first disarmament convention that contains legal obligations to provide assistance for victims of the weapons that are prohibited. It is often referred to as one of the first humanitarian disarmament conventions. The convention's Article 6 requires that each state's party in a position to do so shall provide assistance for the care and rehabilitation, social and economic reintegration of mine victims, and for mine awareness programs. Since entry into force of the convention in 1999, we have come a long way in making the legal obligation a body of efforts we now call victim assistance. And it is critical to the desire that 164 states parties to put an end to the suffering and the casualties caused by the anti-personnel mines. A little bit of the history. In 1998, the International Committee of the Red Cross estimated that mines were killing or injuring more than 24,000 people per year. The latest landmine monitor report shows that in 2021, only 5,500 people were harmed by landmines or explosive remnants of war in some 50 states and areas. As you can see, the progress in reducing casualties has been significant. It took years for states parties and partners to establish a better understanding of how the victim assistance provisions should be implemented. And since its entry into force, the states parties have strengthened their commitment and advanced our shared understanding and responsibility to empower mine survivors to exercise their rights on equal basis with other members of society. The understanding that victim assistance is a human right and that efforts in this regard should be guided by this and other principles such as non-discrimination has helped states align their national policies accordingly. It has also ensured that we embrace the notion of inclusive development in a sense that victim assistance does not require the development of new fields or disciplines, but rather calls for ensuring that existing healthcare and social service systems, rehabilitation programs, and legislative policy frameworks are adequate to meet the needs of all citizens, including landmine victims. The adoption of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2006, which codified a human right-based approach into human rights law, immensely strengthened the application of the human rights principle in victim assistance. Today, you cannot find a victim assistance activity that is not aligned, associated, or implemented in conjunction with the CRPD provisions in states parties that have joined the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. Currently, 36 of the 38 states parties have reported that mine victims are also party to the CRPD. And in this respect, I'm pleased that the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and human rights experts are present in this conference. In recent years, we also witnessed some global developments that positively impacted our work on victim assistance. These include the UN Security Council Resolution 2475, calling on member states and parties to the armed conflict to protect persons with disabilities in conflict situations and to ensure that they have access to justice, basic services, and unimpeded humanitarian assistance. And this had, unfortunately, never been so relevant. All the other efforts made by Human Rights Council, the World Health Assembly, among others, have created a strong momentum in favor of persons with disabilities, including those impaired by explosions and personnel mines or other explosive ordnance. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to go into details of where we are today and what challenges we encounter, as I'm certain that in these next 3 days, the experts will address most of these matters. Suffice to say that we do observe, including the committee's interactions with mine-affected states, that there are important challenges that we will have to address, and these include updating national statistics and information on mine victims, their living situations, and their whereabouts, and indeed, a constant work to consider informed and effective decision-making. Boosting our efforts to increase access to first aid, health care, rehabilitation, mental health, psychological support, and social and economic inclusion. Furthermore, allocating more funds, including through health, education, development, human rights, and other relevant disciplines. And furthermore, by enhancing our national capacities and ownerships and improving on reporting on victim assistance. So as I mentioned earlier, many of these challenges and solutions to these challenges will be discussed throughout the next 3 days. I look forward to hearing from all of you on how we can do more and do better to build our significant progress made thus far. I thank you very much for listening to me, and I call upon the Chief Implementation Support Units to give his comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brigadier General, for your remarks. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Juan Carlos Ruan, Director of the Implementation Supporting Unit, to the stage, please.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, General Kazahura, for your work on the committee and the invaluable support of Uganda. So after months of planning, some missed flights, some missed luggage, for most of you, we're all here to get together. And isn't it incredible? Isn't it a valuable time now with this troubled world, it seems? Isn't it nice to know that we will have the opportunity to gather here and speak about a subject that we're all very passionate about? Isn't it nice to know that we have the opportunity to exchange lessons learned to help each other achieve our goals, because we can't do this on our own, and we know this. Isn't it nice that, as the opening speakers mentioned, that we have the opportunity with the deliberations and conclusions of this global conference to shape the future thinking around the next action plan, which is to be adopted here in Cambodia in 2024. And so I do hope that everyone does take a full advantage of this conference, because the success lies in the participants' hands and how we engage in the discussion. So as the conference motto says, it's an opportunity to reflect, inspire, learn, and empower. Now, Cambodia has prepared a comprehensive program, which we take the opportunity to thank all the moderators and panelists ahead of time that join us here in Phnom Penh and online. And we thank the interpreters who will help us support our conversation over the next 3 days. So as you can see from the program, there'll be a wealth of opportunities to engage during the plenary. Today we meet in this beautiful ballroom. This afternoon we separate into parallel sessions into the ballroom next door. And following parallel sessions this afternoon, we'll return here to have the opportunity for all participants to learn about what discussions took place in each ballroom in a session called Closing the Loop. Tomorrow we'll continue with our discussions here. We'll be splitting up into regional groups to have regional discussions on the challenges that we encounter as different region. And these will be very important to spotlight regional challenges and solutions. So I would like to also take this opportunity to thank those that have agreed, that have volunteered to moderate the different regional discussions, which will be ongoing tomorrow. So thank you very much for your support. Tomorrow there will also be a number of side events, and I want to thank those that have organized interesting side events, and I urge you to take the time and visit these side events and engage in the topic of the side event. Tomorrow there's a co-hosted reception between the German current president and the incoming president of Cambodia. And on Wednesday, we'll continue with our program ahead of the closing. Now, the CMA staff and the ISU are ready to support your efforts to ensure a successful conference, so please do not hesitate to contact us at any time. Now, without further ado, allow me now to thank you all very much and welcome the first session of this global conference, which is entitled Victim Assistance Beyond Mine Action, moderated by Héry, the Director of Advocacy and Institutional Relations of Humanity and Inclusion. So I welcome Anne, and I welcome all the panelists. So thank you very much, and please, to the panelists, please come forward.
Let's wait until we have all the panelists well settled. Okay, so let's start our panel looking at the world's beyond mine action. I'm Héry. I'm the director for Advocacy for Handicap International, Humanity and Inclusion. But before introducing the panelists, I will ask Emily Pinvat to inspire us by telling us her story as a survivor from a landmine accident. Emily, the floor is yours. À toi.
Allô? Bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Émilie Vatt, je viens de France. J'avais 7 ans. Nous fuyions les Khmers rouges à pied avec la famille à travers la forêt. En voulant me rafraîchir dans un étang avec d'autres enfants, un homme m'a bousculé et mon pied s'est posé sur une mine antipersonnelle. Il y a eu une détonation absourdissante. Je me souviens que d'un voile noir. Je ne voyais plus rien. Quand je suis revenue à moi, j'ai vu que j'avais la moitié de la jambe gauche déchiquetée par l'explosion. J'ai reçu les premiers soins en urgence, mais pour une véritable prise en charge, je devais me rendre dans un camp réfugié en Thaïlande. Des personnes qui fuyaient avec nous m'ont porté sous une civière pendant 15 jours à travers la forêt, sans médicaments, sans antidouleurs, rien. Quand nous sommes arrivés au camp de Kaoidan, j'ai vu qu'il y avait de nombreuses personnes avec des bras ou des jambes en moins. C'était en grande majorité des enfants. On m'a emmené au dispensaire où on a enlevé mes bandages. Ça a duré au moins 5 minutes et je me souviens très bien comme le tissu blanc est soudain devenu tout rouge. Une fois les bandages enlevés, les médecins ont constaté que la gangrène gagnait ma jambe. Ils ont décidé de m'anesthésier pour procéder à une amputation. Je suis sortie du coma 1 mois plus tard. Avant l'opération, je pensais que l'amputation se ferait au niveau du genou, ce qui aurait été plus facile pour remarcher. Mais en remontant le drap, j'ai réalisé qu'on m'avait amputé plus haut, au niveau fémoral. Dans le camp, il y avait un atelier handicap international qui faisait beaucoup de bruit, et dès que j'ai pu me déplacer avec des béquilles, je suis allée voir de quoi il s'agissait. Dans l'atelier, il y avait des marteaux, des morceaux de bambou et des tiges de fer. Un des ouvriers m'a vu et il m'a expliqué « Nous fabriquons des prothèses en bambou pour des enfants comme toi. Elles serviront aux personnes amputées à cause des mines antipersonnelles. » Je suis entrée en courant chez mes parents et j'ai crié « Maman, il y a un atelier où ils font des jambes pour des enfants comme moi. » J'ai dû attendre que ma jambe cicatrise pour essayer ma première prothèse. Au début, ça m'a fait très mal. Rappelez-vous qu'à l'époque, on n'avait rien pour diminuer la douleur. Mais dès que j'ai posé mon pied appareillé par terre, je me suis exclamée « Enfin, je peux marcher de nouveau comme les autres. » 6 mois après avoir été amputée, j'avais de nouveau 2 pieds. Malgré la douleur, j'ai mis la prothèse tous les jours. J'ai fait du foot en tongs, j'ai joué aux billes et à l'élastique, j'ai dansé sous la pluie, et comme tous les enfants du monde, j'ai fait toutes les bêtises possibles et inimaginables. Mais alors que je vous parle maintenant, je sais quelque part dans le monde des enfants, des femmes et des hommes qui vivent encore les horreurs des mines et des autres engins explosifs, et qui se sentent abattus, qui n'osent plus croire à leurs rêves. Alors je leur dis, battez-vous, il faut que ces tragédies prennent fin. Au nom de toutes les victimes de mines à travers le monde, je lance un appel à tous les pays, alors que vous commencez à penser au nouveau plan d'action à 5 ans du traité d'Ottawa, qui serait adopté en décembre de l'année prochaine. Nous avons besoin d'un sursaut pour soutenir pleinement les victimes de mines et des autres engins explosifs. Chaque survivant doit pouvoir bénéficier des services essentiels que sont les réadaptations, le soutien psychologique, l'accompagnement pour retourner à l'école, pour retrouver un travail, etc. Cet accès aux services doit également être facilité pour les familles des personnes tuées ou blessées, ainsi que l'entièreté des communautés vivant dans les zones contaminées. Sans ce programme de soutien, la vie des victimes peut être incroyablement difficile. Je sais que de nombreuses personnes au Cambodge et dans d'autres pays n'ont pas accès à ces services vitaux. Il est de votre devoir de leur tendre la main, de les aider à reconstruire et à lutter contre l'horreur qu'ils ont vécue et qu'elles retrouvent une place entière en total dans la société. Mon souhait, je souhaite qu'un enfant dans le futur ne vive ce que nous, enfants, nous avons vécu au siècle dernier. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Emily, for these very strong words. We are really at the start of this conference, so we need to set the scene, we need to scan the horizon, and this is what we are going to try to do with my fellow panelists here. The Oslo Action Plan has really highlighted the need to avoid working in silos, and now that we are at the point we are about to establish a new action plan, we really need to ensure that the victim assistance part is very strong, and we need also to take stock of the progress, what has been done, and the key trends, because the world is not the same as what it was when the preceding action plan, the Oslo Action Plan, was established. We have been through a pandemic. New conflicts have emerged with an appalling number of civilian casualties due to explosive weapons. New frameworks, new instruments also have been created. I'm thinking of a new resolution on rehabilitation by the World Health Assembly, for instance, or the guidelines on inclusion of persons with disabilities into humanitarian action by the Interagency Standing Committee on the
Charlotte,
humanitarian
can
side.
you hear me?
So we need
Spiros from
to
the
look into that.
conference.
The panelists around me come from a
You're on mute. Yeah, can you try again?
diverse.
Can you hear me now?
They come from the world of mine action. They come from the world of
Can you hear me
disability
now?
rights, of health.
Hi,
They
Charlotte.
also come
Can you hear me?
of rehabilitation.
I
They
can hear
come
you,
from
yeah, but
a
can you hear me?
Okay,
diversity
I
of
can't hear
countries,
you.
of organizations,
Hold on.
national, multilateral. So I will ask them to tell us from their own perspective what they have seen as the progress, the trends, the challenges in establishing links between victim assistance and other worlds and sectors. So we'll
I
first go
will
through a round of 5-minute
I will
presentations.
have
I'm really asking you
a
to try to be
technicians
brief, because
in a
then
second to
we want
test
to have
your
some time
microphone.
to
So
receive questions from the audience.
please stay with us.
We will start
Thank you.
by Your Excellency Mao Benhaf. You are the director of the Cambodian Mine Action Authority. So please tell us from your perspective in Cambodian about this. No, you can stay here.
Thank you very much for moderator. For my side, speak about the experience and success and challenge in Cambodian for implementation about the victim assistance. Now I jump into my speaker. Okay, I want to mention about the CMAA rules. CMAA is responsible for regulating, providing license and accreditation, coordinating and monitoring all mine action activities, mine clearance, risk education, and victim assistance to mine EO victim, as well as for formulating national mine action strategy and plan to achieve the priority identified by Royal Government of Cambodia's development policy. Victim assistance is a part of mine action pillar and will stay as a part of mine action in Cambodia, now and in the future. The needs of mine survivors, their families, and community are at the center of CMAA attentions. They are the ones who suffer most and must be given a chance to rebuild their life after trauma they have gone through as a result of landmines and explosive remnant of wars. Victim assistance also requires a holistic and inclusive approach and to be considered in the broader disability sector. Cambodian Mine Action and Victim Assistance Authority advocates this inclusivity, ensuring that assistance of mine victims and survivors is integrated adequately into broader national policy, plans, and legal framework related to the rights of persons with disability, health, education, employment, development, and poverty reduction. In Cambodia, assistance to landmine victims is undertaken to include any person injured or disabled in other manner. only landmine survivor, but also all other persons with war-related injuries or other form of disability, and is part of Cambodian's overall public health and social service system and framework. CMAA successfully collaborate with relevant agencies, professional associations, as well as the relevant national and international institutions, whilst the management, coordination, and follow-up service to victims are the responsibility of the Ministry of Social Affairs and the DACs and all the relevant organizations. CMAA provide feedbacks and subject matter expertise to their strategic plan, programs, and reports. In addition to the government, CMAA has strong collaboration with UNDP. With UNDP, the Clearing Forest projects support landmine clearance, land release, victim assistance, and EORE. The government of Australia, the public of Korea, and New Zealand support on the project. We engage with the civil society and private sector, for example, health, education, and social affairs, to jointly achieve with victim assistance. By engaging multi-sector, our partner leverage knowledge, expertise, reach, and resource benefiting from our combined and various strengths as we work toward shared goals of producing better outcome for landmine victims and persons with disability. It is challenging as well as work in different buildings and have our own agendas. What is needed is a willingness at leadership and mandate at policy level to plan and execute successful multi-sectoral coordination. All the major stakeholders are required to share a common vision and perspective, developing an institutional mechanism is the utmost
Can you speak?
requirements.
Hello,
We
hello.
currently
Hello.
work in
Hello.
silos
Here.
through CMA advice of actor
Hello,
and
hello. Hello,
technical
hello,
working
hello.
groups, meeting
Oh, you
victim
need to speak.
assistance,
Just saying
and
hello.
national workshop and technical working group on
Oh, she's on.
innovation. Successful victim assistance goes beyond
She
mine
can.
action.
They're good.
There is a requirement for
You can hear.
multi-sectoral synchronizations.
Okay,
All
I
those
can hear,
working
but
in
apparently the
disability
production
advocacy
can hear
should
you. So
include landmine
so they will
survivors
put you
in
to
broader
speak. Yeah.
disability policy to
Charlotte, we
ensure
are on the
benefit
first
for
speaker,
community and
and
rights.
in you have the agenda,
Inclusive
right?
education in rural areas
You
and
will
social
be
protection to ensure that the
after
rights of
4.
landmine
Yes, you're the
survivors and
first.
other
So,
persons with
but can you
disability
hear the room?
move
Can you
from
follow?
assistance to ensuring the protection of
Okay.
their rights.
So I will give you, I will chat
Collective
when
works
your turn
is
is close.
undertaken,
So I will give you a
inviting
heads up.
all stakeholders together to ensure a human rights response, including landmine survivors in this work. Broaden approach is include other persons with disability from a human rights perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for sharing this experience. I will now turn to you, Rigbe Hawaria. You're a commissioner for disability rights in Ethiopia. So please share your expertise with us on the Ethiopian challenges and progress. Is there many microphones?
Thank you so much, moderator. My name is Regbe from Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. To start from the current situation in Ethiopia, Ethiopia is heavily mined. It's the world's 10 most heavily mined countries. And we have been going through a lot of war and conflict internally, and other neighboring countries involved in different conflicts and war. And we're still going through conflicts in different parts of the country, but there is a cessation of hostilities in the northern part of Ethiopia, and but we are left behind. We left behind a lot of unexploded ordnance and explosive remnants of war, and they are claiming different lives. Hundreds of people have died because of that, and these are all civilians and mostly their children. And this has resulted in a displacement of people from their areas, and it has also become difficult to relocate and reintegrate internally displaced persons to their former areas. And it has also become difficult to provide humanitarian aid for people in need. So it's really high time we prioritize this, but it looks like the government has not given the priority it needs in terms of victim assistance and in terms of clearing mines and other explosive remnants of war. So with regard to victim assistance, we have different sectors involved in this. We have a multi-sectoral approach, but there are two important ministries that are involved, especially in rehabilitation. We have the Ministry of Health, specifically focused on physical rehabilitation, but we also have the Ministry of Women and Social Affairs working on psychosocial support to victims. But in terms of having a holistic approach to victim assistance, we still need the participation of other government stakeholders which are not on board, and which has become difficult to make it inclusive and holistic in terms of approach. So we need to bring the Ministry of Labor and Skills, the Ministry of Education on board to bring a holistic victim assistance in this case. Ethiopia has also established a National Rehabilitation Commission after the cessation of hostilities in the northern part of Ethiopia. But this assists only combatants of war, and it's not focused on civilians. So the civilian assistance is mostly with the regular ministries and bureaus of health and social affairs. We have different rehabilitation centers, physical rehabilitation centers, and these are in different regions, and also the capital. We have about 21, but Ethiopia is the second most populated country in Africa. So in terms of population, we cannot say that all people have access, but at least in terms of quantity, we have centers in different parts of the country, but we're still left with quality insurance and technical gaps are there as well. So there needs work to do on that. So these centers are government-owned and also run by different international organizations like ICRC and other support organizations. With regard to the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission as an independent national human rights institutions, we closely monitor government's efforts in clearing mines and victim assistance, and also clearing other explosive remnants of war. And we have been pushing the government to execute its responsibilities, also in terms of clearing these remnants of war, and also in assisting victims. And we have a dedicated department for disability and older persons' rights, which is also working on monitoring and advocacy on this area, on disability in general, but also focusing on victims of mines and explosive remnants of war. And in terms of independent mechanism based on the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, Article 33.2, we have requested the government to designate as an independent monitoring mechanism for the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and the request is still pending. So that will give us a chance to monitor closer with regard to victim assistance. So the challenges we are facing in this regard include, first and foremost, there's gaps in data. We don't know the casualties, we don't know the number of survivors, we don't know what kind of support they need. So there's really a need to close the gap in terms of data gathering, and that will help us customize our interventions and close the gap in terms of the interventions that are specifically needed in terms of victim assistance. And there's also generally limited access to health, including emergency care casualties. And because of the conflict, the situation has worsened because we have lost a lot of health services, and they've been destroyed because of war, or their capacity has been diminished. So there's a lot of lack of access to health. And on the provision of psychosocial support and economic reintegration, that's really an issue, because if there are some efforts, they focus on physical rehabilitation and they tend to deprioritize psychosocial support and economic reintegration. So that's where there's a gap as well. And there's little or no attention given to explosive remnants of war and their effects on civilians and victim assistance. Disability rights in general is deprioritized. It's not a political agenda, it's not a national agenda, it's not economic or social agenda. So that's really a gap. And in relation to this, our interventions are medical and charity based, and we don't really follow the human rights based approach when we design interventions for victims and when we implement these interventions. The other one is ignoring the special needs of victims of mines and explosive war remnants, and especially in terms of disability type and the trauma they've been through. It's high time that we focus on their special needs, but they're usually ignored, and it's really a generalized approach that we use. And last but not least, Ethiopia is not a party. Ethiopia is a party to the Mine Ban Treaty and the CRPD, of course, but Ethiopia is not a party to the Convention on Conventional Weapons and Convention on Cluster Munitions. And these conventions really bring the right-based approach to the picture and strengthen the right-based approach. And our recommendation as a commission is as well to be a party to this convention and also to follow the right-based approach to victim assistance. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Rigbe, very enlightening, and Your Excellency as well to see the experience from your two countries, the very excellent efforts towards this multi-sectoral approach. But we can see that while a lot of progress has been made, key challenges remain in access to essential key basic services such as health, rehabilitation, and so we will now look at the global framework, and we will start by you, Catherine Pedreiros. You will give us your perspective on a very important framework, the Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities, which is really a key for this multi-sectoral approach and right approach to victim assistance. So you're now you're working at the Secretariat of the UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So please, the floor is yours to tell us about this framework and the link with victim assistance.
Thank you so much, Anne, and good morning, Your Excellencies, His Excellency Ma Bunat, from the Cambodia Mine Action and Victim Assistance Authority, and distinguished colleagues in this panel. I'm very honored to be here today. I appreciate the hospitality of the government of Cambodia, and I have been inspired by persons with disabilities, committee members on the rights of persons with disabilities, organizations of persons with disabilities who have been active, were drafters, and now implement the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I could not be here today if it's not because of their work and what I have learned from all of them and from all of you. Today, this global conference takes place in the year of the 75th anniversary of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, and this was a big political achievement of our world. And today also we are here discussing while in our world there is a great risk, many people are risking wars, conflict, and that things could be worse. But I would like to refer to some elements that in the experience of the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and in working on human rights could be taken into consideration in implementing victim assistance in the framework of human rights. My main message today is that it is possible to transform victim assistance for it to fulfill and restore human rights. I would like to refer to some ways in a very brief way, in a very brief manner. So first of all, how to ensure that victim assistance fulfills the rights of mine victims and survivors in accordance with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. First, by ensuring the intersectional approach to victim assistance and adopting legislative and political measures that address intersectional discrimination and specific challenges of children, older persons, internally displaced persons, persons in refugee-like situations, women survivors with disabilities, and survivors belonging to ethnic and racial minorities. Addressing intersectionality requires strengthening close consultations and active involvement of all mine survivors with disabilities through their representative organizations in decision-making processes, including organizations of women with disabilities or organizations of internally displaced persons, providing gender and age-appropriate and age-responsive mechanisms for their participation. My second point, it would be that victim assistance in the context of human rights requires upholding individual autonomy and independence of mine survivors with disabilities through all policies and programs, and freedom of choice, for instance, concerning support to live in the community. Housing programs or plans to promote work and employment should recognize mine survivors with disabilities and the right to access employment in the open labor market, avoiding sheltered or segregated places of work. It also requires, for instance, that housing programs recognize the freedom of choice of where to live, how and with whom. A third point on victim assistance is that victim assistance should move away from service delivery only that perpetuates dependency and considers persons with disabilities as recipients of care, to advance in the transformation of services grounded in autonomy and community inclusion. In this year, the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities to the Human Rights Council has issued a report, and he explains in deep what does it mean, this transformation of services for inclusion and upholding autonomy of persons with disabilities. Also, it is necessary to consider that victim assistance should restore dignity of survivors with disabilities, provide pecuniary and non-pecuniary forms of reparation, and eliminate stigmatization and attitudinal stereotypes. What I have witnessed and what I have learned by listening to persons with disabilities is that still stigmatization, stereotypes, and harmful practice continue to exclude persons with disabilities. So as we were called today to go beyond the words of this scenario or our offices, it is necessary to really uphold autonomy and dignity of persons with disabilities, to strengthen even more campaigns and training and all tools that provide for the recognition of persons with disabilities, including mine survivors, as actors, as full actors in their communities. And finally, I think I'm still within the time, I hope, is victim assistance should ensure that survivors with disabilities, close consultation with survivors of disabilities and their active involvement in decision-making concerning designing, implementing, and evaluating victim assistance. Also, victim assistance requires accountability mechanisms. State parties and stakeholders today could commit themselves in setting up mechanisms for independent monitoring and reporting before the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, including organizations of mine victims and survivors of disabilities in these processes. Public reporting under the CRPD will allow state parties and other stakeholders to better understand and receive advice on how to ensure that victim assistance meets the requirements of human rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for enlightening these very important points in only 5 minutes. And yeah, I can see that you have insisted a lot on independent monitoring, on meaningful participation, and I think this will be really key words during this whole 3-day conference. I will now turn to Mark Zlot. He's program manager of a physical rehabilitation center of ICRC here in Cambodia, but he has extensive experience in other countries on the field of physical rehabilitation. So Mark, can you tell us about how you see the progress and challenges towards building bridges and foster partnerships?
Thank you, Anne. Good morning, everybody. I'm happy to see you. Happy to see many faces I've met before, and happy to meet many new ones. When I was asked to participate in this panel, the subtitle was Bridges Between Worlds Fostering Partnerships. So I'm a Swiss national, and when we are not happy with a situation, often one of our comments will be, well, that looks like in medieval times. In medieval times, when you wanted to access a town, a drawbridge had to pull down, gates had to be opened. What has this to do with this here, you may ask? What I mean is a lot has been achieved, but we are not there yet. We need to do more. I think His Royal Prince Mirit explained it very well in his speech. But what we need to do is to break down physical, mental, attitudinal barriers to enable inclusion of persons with disabilities. We need to enable access, that's what I mean by the bridge, to education, training, sport, employment, but also to buildings. We need to promote inclusion of persons with disabilities. The stigma on persons with disabilities is still often based on cultural beliefs, and it needs to be broken down. What can we do that this becomes successful? We need to educate ourselves, parents, communities, the civil societies, politicians, congresses, and furthermore, that this can be successful, that persons with disabilities can be successfully included into society. Numerous participants, persons with disabilities on this Congress, prove that they can equally be successful. When it comes to partnerships, we need to understand who is in charge for what. Which ministry? Is it Ministry of Health? Is it Ministry of Social Affairs? Ministry of Education? And so on. And well-coordinated efforts are needed. I would say transversal shared efforts where responsibilities are shared will break silos and amplify our efforts. So that includes also referrals, that we know where what can be obtained and achieved. Furthermore, also accountability for all players to assure their contribution is needed. It's not just done by signing a convention. We should be accountable when we sign something. To achieve all this, a national coordination committee is needed in any given country if you want to tackle all the tasks. Break out of your silos, reach out to others, what I wanted to say. And make sure that an assured collaborative planning to achieve mutual success, that's what we need to do. We need to work all together, different organizations, all the stakeholders, different ministries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Let's now turn to the health sector. And for that, we will have Kylie Shea receiving a few questions, comments, reaction from the audience on what we have just heard from the panelists and from Emily Watt at the start of this session. So please do not hesitate to raise your hand, take a mic, and react, or maybe share your own vision of the key trends and challenges for these building bridges and foster partnerships between the world of mine action and other worlds. Yes? Don't forget to introduce yourself first. We have plenty of working mics here on the stage.
Miss Charlotte, can you speak into the sound?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, one moment. Yes, one moment.
Hello everyone. My name is Kamel Saadi. I'm from Jordan. As a landmine survivor, I speak. I would like to comment on what Ethiopia said and what Mark said. I think it's about time, together when we are at a conference like this, throughout the past years since the 90s, I feel that we are one big family together, united, supporting each other, and will be there to implement together. Some countries have passed the path, the trip before other countries. They improved, and until today, I do not really see, as a landmine survivor, the support between countries together on the ground. For example, taking Jordan for example, they have finished this. They have crossed the path more than Ethiopia did, for example. I think it's time to support the committees, the governments, the commissions, one country supporting another to help implement, to help do. That's my comment, that I have not really witnessed on the ground, actually in the field. After conferences are over, I have not witnessed that on a wider scale. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. We will keep it in mind, this question about how to to increase, improve, foster international cooperations between countries. Please, panelists, keep that in mind because we will reply to this question later. But we should have now Charlotte McLean-Lapo online. Charlotte, can you speak up?
Yes, can you hear me now? Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly. So please go ahead with your intervention.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity to make a few remarks. And I wanted to start off by saying by 2030, up to 2/3 of the world's extreme poor will live in countries that are characterized by fragility, conflict, and violence. And that the global fragility landscape has worsened significantly. Today we have more violent conflicts globally than any time in the last 30 years. And the world is facing the largest forced displacement crisis ever recorded. As mentioned by others, we have rising inequality, lack of opportunities, discrimination and exclusion, and this is fueling grievances and perceptions of injustice. I think it's important for us to shine a light on issues around climate change, demographic change that was mentioned by the earlier speaker, migration, digital transformation, violent extremism, and many of these things are interconnected and have an impact in terms of being trans-border. And these factors are important to mention because they increase vulnerability to shocks and crises, and as we know, create regional spillovers. And they can have devastating impact, particularly for women, children, for youth, and for persons with disabilities. And as we all know, that these are shocks that can be felt for generations to come. And so without swift action, we could erode the gains that we've made to address poverty and certainly undermine prospects of further progress. So at the bank, we have a FCV strategy that looks at fragility, conflict, and violence, and it's in place to enhance the bank's work on effectiveness to support countries in addressing drivers and impacts of FCV and look at issues around resilience, especially for the most vulnerable persons, including and explicitly reference to persons with disabilities. And the recognition of this comes about as a result that we know that if we don't address this category of persons, we will not meet the twin goals of the bank's twin goals or those of sustainable development. We also know that persons with disabilities disproportionately are impacted by situations of conflict, and that conflict and forced displacement are also major causes of disability, and that this may be long-term disability, physical disability, it may be disability that is mental disability, consequences of that, and that there are very strong socioeconomic impacts that result as a result of these conflicts. And the bank has estimated that the share of persons living in extreme poverty in conflict-affected situations is expected to rise to 50% by 2030. And I think this then brings us to the point around what does this mean for humanitarian assistance and post-conflict recovery. Now, I wanted to flag a couple of other issues. I wanted to flag the issue around unequal power dynamics in risk situations, which often pose dangers, especially for persons with disabilities who may be in need of support. It's particularly an issue for women and girls with disabilities who may experience sexual exploitation in these types of contexts. And I just also wanted to talk about the impact that this has on civilians across the board, thinking about it in relation to children, women, people of all ages, and importantly, thinking about the impact, not just in terms of physical disability, but also very much in terms of mental health impacts. Now, I wanted to just quickly say that you know, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we're beginning to see evidence that shows resources for disability support services and disability inclusion are being diverted or were diverted to spread the curve of the virus and look at pandemic preparedness going forward. And I think we're going to go into a space where it's going to be difficult for us to really ensure that we have good investments in disability inclusion. So I want to put that out as an important piece for consideration. At a global level, we have a number of really great policy pieces and goals. We have SDG 11, we have the new urban agenda, we have the commitments to action, but perhaps most importantly in relation to disability, we have Article 11 of the CRPD. And that's the article that looks at a situation of risk in humanitarian emergencies and requires positive measures of protection and safety for persons with disabilities. What's important for this audience, and I think something that we should all pay attention to, is that there's currently a process underway to develop a general comment on Article 11. And I think it would be important to ensure that issues related to victim assistance find traction into this particular general comment. As mentioned, there have been some really important moves in terms of the historic adoption by the Security Council of its resolution 2475, which looks at the protection of persons with disabilities in armed conflict. And it really breaks new ground by highlighting the positive role that persons with disabilities play and should play in post-conflict processes. But also, it moves the needle a bit to talk about reconciliation, reconstruction, and the issue around peace building. And I'm sure some of my colleagues present will be talking about the importance of ensuring that persons with disabilities are part of the peace building process. Of course, we then have the UN Security Resolution 1325 that looks at women, peace, and security, and it too addresses issues related to the inclusion of women and girls with disabilities. We have the Oslo Action Plan, which in some way moves the needle on victim assistance, but runs short in terms of addressing reasonable accommodations for persons with disabilities. And having that explicit language becomes very important. Now, just to say at the bank, over many years, the bank has supported post-conflict reconstruction and social economic revitalization in Croatia, where we supported the removal of landmines, and this allowed for emergency reconstruction of bridges, roads, and rail lines. We had 400 community infrastructure and economic revitalization projects in the war-affected areas that addressed issues related to persons with disabilities. In Rwanda, we also worked with people who had been ex-combatants with disabilities, and in that regard provided a holistic package where we looked at capacity building, training. We provided grants for micro projects. We had counseling. We had addressed issues around assistive technologies and devices. Similarly, in Burundi, we had projects that supported that. And I raise these projects because I think it's important for us when we think about victim assistance and the discussion at hand to think about how we address this in the most holistic fashion. In closing, I just wanted to emphasize the 4 Ps that are present in the World Bank's FCV strategy, and that is the emphasis on policy, programs, partnerships, and personnel. And these 4 Ps are used to measure the impact of the strategy. And I think that engagements like today and conferences such as the one we're engaged in now are part of building those partnerships. But I think we need to look at how do we better coordinate and how do we leverage so that programs are actually being maximized and really addressing the specific needs of persons with disabilities. Thank you very much.
One there. If someone can bring a mic. And yes, the other one over there.
បាទខ្ញុំសូមអរគុណជាច្រើនដែលយកមិនទាំង5ទាំង6ហើយទាំងអ្នកដែលចូលរួមមកនៅថ្ងៃនេះហើយខ្ញុំរីករាយសប្បាយណាស់ហើយខ្ញុំខ្ញុំឈ្មោះពេជ្ររឿនខាង OPD នៅខេត្តបាត់ដំបងបាទខ្ញុំធ្វើការជាមួយជនពិការផ្ទាល់ហើយខ្ញុំមានកូន2នាក់ហើយឥឡូវចាំដល់ចៅទៀតដល់មានចៅបន្ទុកនៅចៅកំព្រាទៀតហើយបាទខ្ញុំអរគុណដែលម្ចាស់ជំនួយដែលចាប់អារម្មណ៍ហើយគិតគូរហើយព្រមទាំងរាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលខ្ញុំដែរគាត់បានគិតគូរគោលនយោបាយជាច្រើនដាក់បញ្ចូលនៃបញ្ហាពិការភាពនេះតែហើយខ្ញុំសូមទី1ខ្ញុំសូមអំពាវនាវដល់ពិភពលោកទាំងមូលសូមឲ្យអាណិតដល់មនុស្សស្លូតត្រង់មនុស្សជាតិកុំឲ្យឈប់ឲ្យផលិតនៅក្របមីននិងក្របមិនទាន់ផ្ទុះក្របមីនទាំងឡាយណាដែលប៉ះពាល់ដល់ប្រជាពលរដ្ឋស្លូតត្រង់ដូចខ្ញុំជាអ្នករងគ្រោះដោយសារមីនប្រភេទមួយពិការទាំងដៃទាំងជើងទៀតអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំមានការឈឺចាប់ណាស់ឈឺចាប់បំផុតក្នុងជីវិតរបស់ខ្ញុំមួយឆាកជីវិតរបស់ខ្ញុំនេះកើតមកមានដៃមានជើងគ្រប់គ្រាន់ដូចគេតែក្នុងពេលនេះខ្ញុំរងគ្រោះដោយសារមានដោយគ្រាប់មិនទាន់ទុះនឹងហើយដែលធ្វើឲ្យខ្ញុំមានពិការឈឺចាប់ហើយជាបញ្ចប់ហើយជាបន្តទៀតខ្ញុំសូមអរគុណដល់អ្នករាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលខ្ញុំហើយព្រមទាំងម្ចាស់ជំនួយនានាដែលជួយមកដល់ប្រទេសកម្ពុជាខ្ញុំហើយជួយបោសសម្អាតក្របមីននេះគឺជាវិស័យធំធេងណាស់កុំឲ្យមនុស្សជំនាន់ក្រោយនេះបន្តវេនទៅការឈឺចាប់ដូចខ្ញុំទៀតអញ្ចឹងជំនួយពិតមែនប៉ុន្តែមិនទាន់បានដល់អត្ថិភាពទៅដល់ដៃជនដែលរងរងគ្រោះដោយសារមីនផ្ទាល់ឲ្យបានពេញលេញទេអញ្ចឹងទាំងពិស័យទាំងបុគ្គលិកបើសិនជាមានបុគ្គលិកជាច្រើនដែលធ្វើការសូមឲ្យមានជំនាញផ្នែកពិការភាពអ្នកសម្របសម្រួលនឹងខ្លះអត់មានជំនាញសម្របសម្រួលគ្រប់គ្រាន់ផងយកបន្ទុកនឹងទៅដាក់នៅជនរងគ្រោះដោយសារមានធ្វើឲ្យគាត់ផ្លូវចិត្តកាន់តែធ្ងន់ធ្ងរឡើងដោយសារការអនុវត្តដោយមិនមានភាពសុក្រិតអាហ្នឹងមិនភាពសុក្រិតហើយភាពលំអៀងអាហ្នឹងសូមជំនុំពរម្ចាស់ជំនួយខ្លួនថាពិនិត្យមើលឲ្យមែនតើថាការដាក់នឹងការជួយនឹងជួយតើទៅដល់ពួកគាត់ពិតប្រាកដអត់មុននឹងខ្ញុំឡើងមកខ្ញុំសួរទៅជនដែលរងគ្រោះសាមីនជាង100នាក់ឲ្យគាត់និយាយគាត់ថាគាត់នៅតែមានវិការផ្លូវចិត្តតែប៉ុណ្្នឹងហើយសូមឲ្យជួយជំនួយនឹងឲ្យដល់ផ្ទាល់ដល់ជនដែលរងគ្រោះនិងគ្រួសាររបស់ពួកគាត់ហើយសប្តាហ៍នេះក៏ខ្ញុំជួយដែរតាមរយៈ UNDP តាមកាកបាទក្រហមអន្តរជាតិអញ្ចឹងគាត់បានជួយផ្នែកទាំងផ្លូវចិត្តផ្លូវកាយក៏ខ្ញុំបានចុះទៅផ្សព្វផ្សាយជួយដល់ពួកគាត់ជាពិសេស UNDP ICRC អញ្ចឹងគាត់ជួយច្រើនណាស់ជួយផ្ទាល់ប៉ុន្តែនៅតែអត់ទាន់បានគ្រប់គ្រាន់គ្រប់គ្រងជុកជ្រោយរបស់សម្រាប់ជនដែលរងគ្រោះដោយសារមីនអញ្ចឹងសូមឲ្យជួយបន្តបន្ថែមទៀតដើម្បីធ្វើយ៉ាងណាឲ្យមានប្រសិទ្ធភាពហើយជាពិសេសអ្នកដែលធ្វើការលើវិស័យជំនាញពិការភាពនោះឲ្យគាត់មានជំនាញពិតប្រាកដដើម្បីធ្វើការដើម្បីកាត់បន្ថយនៅភាពផ្លូវចិត្តរបស់គាត់នឹងបន្ថែមទៀតបាទសូមអរគុណខ្ញុំមានប៉ុណ្ណឹងបាទសូមអរគុណបាទ
Thank you for your intervention and yes, insisting on the need for clearance and taking into account the mental aspect of it. I have, okay, I know that we have 2 questions, so please be short in your questions, and then we will do the wrap up with the panelists. So one there, yes, go ahead.
Voilà, bonjour tout le monde. Moi je m'appelle Ibou Dembo Goudjavi. Je viens du Sénégal. Je suis victime par un engin explosif. Donc d'abord, je remercie à tous les initiateurs de cette conférence de pouvoir donner la chance aux victimes de pouvoir être parmi nous humainement. Je remercie aussi le gouvernement du Sénégal à travers le CNAMS, le Centre national de l'action anti-mine, qui aussi à leur tour essaie de donner tout leur possible pour pouvoir vraiment aider ces personnes et ces victimes de mines. Malgré vous connaissez l'Afrique, en particulier, les pays sont dans des situations difficiles. Et que les gouvernements essaient de donner aussi, si je parle l'exemple du Sénégal, leur possible pour pouvoir donner à ces personnes la dignité de vivre comme ils peuvent. Mais aussi, je remercie les initiateurs de cette conférence parce que moi, je pense que les lois sont là. Tout a été écrit et je pense que c'est parfait. Mais le problème, c'est le suivi. Le suivi. Et quand je parle de suivi au niveau local, il y a des problèmes. Sur les pays en voie de développement, ils ont peut-être la volonté, mais ils n'arrivent pas à cause des difficultés qui sont là. À notre niveau, on est en train de faire, parce qu'avec le CNAMS, ils nous ont aidés beaucoup à pouvoir mettre en place une politique d'indépendance à notre association, de pouvoir œuvrer et de chercher des partenaires. Et nous, en tant que personnes en situation de handicap, on a pris du devant en essayant de mettre en place tout ce qui est nécessaire pour que nous puissions vivre comme des personnes en parfaite dignité dans cette société. À ce niveau, on a mis en place au niveau de l'assistance. C'est vrai, on travaille en collaboration avec le CNAMS sur les soins d'urgence, sur la santé, sur la santé psychologique. Mais il y a un problème. Imaginez un seul docteur dans toutes les 3 régions du Sénégal, pour ceux qui connaissent au Sénégal. C'est difficile. Il est le seul spécialiste en psychologie et que tout le monde doit le contacter pour qu'il puisse rendre les services. Et ce seul des médecins aussi, les personnes en situation de handicap vont compter sur lui. C'est difficile. Donc, à ce niveau aussi, il faut que les organisateurs puissent aussi essayer de voir. Mais à mon niveau, au point de vue de l'assistance économique aussi, parce qu'une personne qui a perdu un membre ou bien qui est une victime, il a un problème pour pouvoir vraiment réussir physiquement dans les travaux. Et la majeure partie de ces personnes vivent lointain dans des zones où des fois il n'y a pas de formation, il n'y a pas d'école, il n'y a rien. Donc c'est difficile que ces personnes puissent vraiment arriver. Et d'ailleurs, la plupart de ces personnes vont mourir à cause du chagrin. Imaginez une personne qui faisait tout. En un beau jour, il perd une membre ou bien il perd. La plupart, après avoir eu leur accident, ont perdu leur mari ou bien ils ont perdu leur conjoint, c'est-à-dire ils ont été abandonnés par leur partenaire. Il y a beaucoup de victimes qui ont été abandonnées et ils ont des enfants. C'est difficile, cette situation. Et que j'aimerais vraiment que la communauté internationale puisse trouver des solutions par rapport à ça. Et la dernière chose que je vais revenir, c'est au niveau des victimes. Nous, les victimes. C'est vrai que, regardez, nous qui sommes tous ici dans cette salle, la majeure partie ne sont pas des victimes. Et ils se préoccupent pour nous. Mais comme il y a un adage africain qui dit quand on te verse de l'eau, toi aussi il faut avoir les mains pour pouvoir vraiment se frotter pour que vous soyez propre. Cela veut dire quoi? Nous aussi, les victimes, il faut qu'on essaie de nous organiser avec l'aide de la communauté internationale pour qu'on puisse se regrouper et avoir de l'expérience. Parce que j'ai entendu ici le Cambodge, c'est une expérience très honorable. Et que d'autres aussi associations pouvaient profiter pour pouvoir vraiment aller en avant. Parce que la seule chose que je n'ai pas entendue ici, est-ce qu'il y a une organisation internationale pour les victimes? Est-ce que les victimes ont une organisation regroupée qui peut vraiment aussi prendre en compte leur situation? S'il y en a, bon, peut-être à ma connaissance, il n'y a pas. Peut-être il y a des organisations locales.
Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
For sharing your experience, and I'm really sorry, but we are really running out of time, so I'm going to ask, I will not be able to take this last question, I'm really sorry, but in any case, we are all here for 3 days, so we will have time to discuss further, answer further questions. The panelists will be around, so if you want to go to them, reach out to them and discuss with them the different issues, please feel free during this conference. So very quickly, I will ask each of you to give maybe one last key takeaway one key recommendation that you want to make towards the participants to this conference? I will go first to the World Bank because Charlotte has to leave us. Charlotte, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And sorry, it's 12:30 at night in DC, so I need to get some sleep. So I think one recommendation is I think there's a need to have better coordination across the various stakeholders. I think the second recommendation is to make sure that you have organizations of persons with disabilities and representatives at all phases at all levels of discussion, so that they're part of the policy making process, they're part of the programming, they're part of the implementation, they're part of the monitoring and the evaluation. And then I think the other point that I would just emphasize that was made early on by Kylie is the issue around the need for better data, because data tells us a story. So those would be the three things that I would say would be super important. And thank you very much for having me. Sorry, I couldn't be there in person.
Being with us today. Your Excellency, I will give you the floor now.
Thank you very much for our moderator, and thank you very much for the participants around the world and also in Cambodia also. And thank you very much for the European also that support for organizing the event. And also we do hope that all the donors here maybe learns and also maybe lesson from the survivor that they need support from them. I do hope that all the donors will support, especially for landmine victim and person with disability in Cambodia and across the group boss. Thank you.
Thank you. Rigbe, up to you.
Thank you so much for all the participants, for the comments, and for the discussions we just had. I just want to highlight some 3 points on especially international cooperation and support. As the participant from Georgia mentioned earlier, I think it's highly important for countries to share their experiences, resources, and also any technical support that we can get from each other to for victim assistance and also for mine clearance. So thank you so much, and I think that's very important, and we usually focus on resource when we talk about support, but we need to think about the technical in-kind support that we could get from each other. So I think that's very important, and also to learn from countries that have gone through the same paths and how to get through it, because it's really important to exchange as well. And the other point I want to highlight is about diversity and intersectionality. I think other participants, other panelists have also mentioned the gender dimension and the intersectionality between age and disability and all this intersectionalities that we need to keep in mind when we do interventions. And the last point is about awareness of the Mine Ban Treaty and other the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I think we really need to raise awareness, and it should be part of our advocacy work. In our case, there's little or no awareness on the right-based approach and the rights of persons with disabilities and the attitudinal barriers that persons with disabilities face is really huge. So we really need to work on awareness, raising awareness on these international conventions and tools. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rigbe. Mark, now, one key takeaway or recommendation to everyone?
Sure. So, as you know, there's many guidelines and recommendations and so on. What I would recommend to you is really read the global report on assistive technology. It's full of recommendations and entails also the 5P framework for action that takes the people as the center. Don't forget, nothing about us without us. Keep that in your heart and in your mind. Then, in there you have explanations on policy, provision, personnel, and products. These together are the 5 Ps. So, don't reinvent the wheel. It's all there. And then maybe the last thing, when you are in the field, what I said already before, a national coordination committee or a body that includes all the relevant ministries, NGOs, international organizations shall make sure that efforts are well coordinated and all important players work transversal. Mine victim authorities shall join efforts with MOH, with MOSFI, with MOLSA, whatever you call your Ministry of Social Affairs. We should break out of that silo and work all together. And this will help us to advocate for ownership, to answer the question who came from UNDP. Thank you very much, and I wish you a good continuation.
Thank you, Mark. Catherine, your last word for this session.
Thank you so much. I would only recall that transforming victim assistance is possible, and it requires to combat all forms of exclusion and segregation against persons with disabilities and uphold their independence and autonomy.
Thank you, and Kylie, you have the last word on this key takeaway.
That's an honour to have the last word.
Thank you, Mark.
And thank you, Mark, for flagging the global report on assistive technology. I greatly appreciate having airtime for that report. In this point, I really just want to emphasise the need, moving forwards, for us to strengthen services that meet everyone's needs inclusively. We need to avoid siloed services that perpetuate segregation and, to be honest, are inefficient and challenging to sustain long term. And thinking about health, that means ensuring that the needs of landmine survivors, people with disabilities from other causes, people who may have a chronic health condition, and older persons, all can benefit from a coordinated and effective healthcare system. I see this as an opportunity to strengthen and consolidate health systems for all. And then on the theme of integration, and again picking up on what Mark just said about different ministries and who's responsible for what, we really need to think about all of the support services needed by landmine survivors beyond health from an integrated perspective. So we have to continue to build the connections between these services to ensure seamless referral and cooperation, and to ensure that people do not fall through the gaps. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kylie. We have to end this session, so I really very warmly thanks the panelists. You've been all excellent. And I'm calling now the participants to the next roundtable on integrated victim assistance to come forward on the stage. Thank you everyone.